Righto, so got the engine flipped over. Sumpy time. And then what we're going to have to do, I think, with this one, because we can't, because it's a 3-piece crankcase, this engine stand, well, it's just, yeah, it's not possible to keep it in the engine stand for a complete strip. It's not possible with any engine, really, to keep it in the engine stand, because you're using the, yeah, anyway, it's going to have to, we'll get the sump off, and then I'm going to have to get it off the stand and put it on the bench for the remainder of the take apart. Clean in there too. Fair play. Okay. Pressure release valve and this oil pickup, which requires a 10mm T-bar. These are probably thread locked in. Feels like it. Yeah. This drain is nice and clean. It's looking quite good for this engine so far. Right, now for the rest of it, I'm going to transplant it over onto the bench, I think. Make life a bit easier for ourselves. Right, she's off the engine stand. It actually needs to be the other way up on the bench, but I've got to get rid of the tensioner blade and this guide before I can flip it over, because I don't want to damage stuff. So if I hold the crank with a spanner on the flywheel side, and then helps if the guns go in the right way. Undo that, and then this just pulls off. It's on a spine, and then I can get to the retaining screws for the guide and the tensioner blade, if that makes sense, and pull those up out of the way. Can also now that chain come all the way out. Not quite. Doesn't look like, oh no, there is actually, there's quite a lot of wear in that tensioner blade. That's going to be replaced, and we'll do the guide at the same time. And the chain is clearly, well, we saw the cam chain tension earlier. Yeah, nothing more to say in there really. Slightly premature in my, that's all there is in there. There's a pickup here. And also a little clip that retains the wire. So let's get that out of the way. Nothing too exciting there, that's just a crank position sensor. Something to be aware of if you're doing one yourself too. This, the movie one, the tensiony blade, has a washer behind the bolt too. So that's something to be mindful of. Right, flip it over, and we'll take the bottom bit of the crankcase off to expose the gearbox. Coolio. Right, that should be it. Yep. There it is. Ta-da! Yeah, I'm just gonna take this apart, take this out and put it to one side. This is gonna get broken down into its components. I think I said earlier on, if you want to have a deep dive into this, well, into motorbike gearboxes, this gearbox in particular, I'll put a link in the description down below, and there'll be a little poppy out thing, card thing. As I say, I did a in-depth. What was it called? It was called The Anatomy of a Motorcycle Gearbox. Yeah, go watch that if you want to know more about this gearbox. I'll break it down into its components, and when we do our inspection, which will be in a future episode, then I'll show you the condition of it and stuff. Yeah. Next thing is, so this is fucking waffling. This is the first piece of the crankcase. If you notice, the crank is still contained because there's another piece of crankcase again. It's kind of unusual. Normally when you split a crankcase this way, you expose the gearbox and the main bearing shells and the crankshaft and stuff. So it's just one extra step. There's another little piece of crankcase to come. It will make sense when you see it come apart further. All this is going to come apart in here. I'm not sure whether they're getting this and whether it's in shot or not, but all the forks are going to come out, all the selector drums is going to be broken down into all its component parts. The oil pump is definitely coming out, and we'll inspect that. I suspect that it's probably, we're going to go to a lot of trouble rebuilding this, so it's probably going to end up with a new oil pump, I would think, just for belt and braces. Right, undo the rest of this and we'll expose the crank, and then I can take the big end caps off and we can push the rods out and have a look at the pistons and stuff and get a better look at the cylinders. Right, okay, onwards. Okie dokie. That's where the whole thing sort of falls apart. Come on now, you know you want to. There we go. There it is. Quick eyeball of the big end, the main bearing shells. It's fucking incredible. It looks absolutely mint. Fair play. God, it's what am I trying to say? It's a testimony to how well made these things are, isn't it? When you can do that many miles on a sports bike engine and it still be pretty much like new. Or not like new, but you know what I mean. Get rid of those dowels out of there. Right, okay. Right, con rods next. Just marking those caps and rods before they come off for obvious reasons. Just, I don't intend to mix them up, but oh, hang on, I need my 6-pointed socket. Is that the one? No. So these bolts are, fucking hell, bash the camera with a breaker bar. These bolts are single use, so they'll be getting chucked away. What you normally do is, if you're doing big end shells and you're measuring oil clearances with plaster gauge, we might get to that possibly in this build. Yeah, if you're using plaster gauge measuring oil clearances, you'd generally use the old bolts just to do your measurements and then final assembly with the new bolts. Right. Remember I was saying when I was taking the clutch out that the crankshaft web was in the way? This is what I was talking about, this piece. This is where the clutch basket would be, driven from this gear. It's banging against this part of the crankshaft. Hands up, who knows what a fractured rod is? These aren't them. So this cap, this bearing cap, is, let me take it off and I'll show you. So this cap, sorry, I'm distracted just looking at these shells. They're in absolutely mint condition by the looks of it. Yeah, a fractured rod would be the con rod. The big end is made, cast in one piece, and then they scribe it, I think, with a laser, and I think they use liquid nitrogen and freeze them and then break them off. And it means when it's bolted back together, the sort of grain of the metal meets. It makes it super strong. Anyway, go look up fractured con rods. Interesting. So I've just written, you getting that in shot? I've written 1, 2, 3, 4 on the cap, overlapping the joints, so you can see a little bit the number 4 there, just so I know which rod they're off and the orientation, if that makes sense. This is my least favourite part of doing an engine, just because I hate all the bloody oil and mess everywhere. It's much nicer once everything's spotlessly clean and you've got a lovely clean workbench and it's all laid out ready for reassembly. That's I like that bit, but you've got to go through a bit of pain to get there. I'm getting I've been doing a lot of work in the workshop in the last few months, you know, doing carbs and engine building, and as nice as it is, I tell you what, I'm itching to get out in the van and just get out on the road and, I was going to say meet people, but I'm not really allowed to do that. But just a change of scenery would be nice. Right, now then, still rolling, camera's still working. Lifty outie of the crankshaft. Whoa. There it is. Just a cursory look, it all looks amazing. Right, let's take this crank away, put it on the bench, and we'll get the pistons out. So, just had a little bit of a clear up. Can't do with a mess, as you all know. Right, glove up. I'm just going to put these bearing caps just back on loosely. Right, and then to get the pistons out, they just push out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, first things first, let's get a good look at these cylinders. So let's keep that camera still. So I'm not sure how this is going to come out on camera. Oh, actually quite good. So can you see the crosshatch? See the hone marks in the cylinder wall still? It's in remarkable condition for the mileage. I mean, we're gonna get a really accurate bore gauge in there and measure for taper and ovality, and we'll talk about that as we build it. But I'd be fairly confident to say there's definitely no replating going to be going on here, which I thought might be the case. Yeah, it's going to need honing, but apart from that, I think we'll be good to go with those cylinders. We'll do some measuring in the next episode probably. And then pistones. There, I mean, this is a sort of cursory look, isn't it? But flipping heck, they're in amazing condition. There's like no sign of any wear. Obviously, I haven't measured yet, but you can tell, what's going on by a good eyeball. And the cylinders and pistons look great. So we're definitely not going to be in the it needs replating situation. It's going to end up having a hone with a flex hone and some new rings, possibly new gudgeon pins, wrist pins. It's definitely not having big end shells or main bearing shells. I can tell you that's all fine just from looking. The cams look good, the cam journal bearings look good. What else is there to say? We'll do a load of measuring. I've got to get the valves out of the head. I'm a little bit worried that maybe the valve guides might potentially be an issue, but given how good the rest of it is, possibly not. So in the next episode, everything will be squeaky clean. I've got a day of cleaning and fanning around ahead of me probably, to get it all sort of ready for assembly really. I think we're going to end up Cerakoting the clutch cover and the cam cover and I was going to say generator cover, but it's got those nice casings, hasn't it, on the ends. Yeah, that's it, guys. I think this is probably this is either the end of part 2 or the end of part 3 even. I might split the engine disassembly into 2 videos, depending on how short I can get it in the edit. So tune in for the next one, which will be measuring of cylinders and piston skirt clearances, and we can talk about oil clearances on bearings and all that sort of good stuff. Anyway, whoa, knock the camera over. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.